All right, top story. The SAR group of aggrieved ANC members in the North West who were granted a voting interdict by the North West High Court against the ANC Interim Provincial Committee members last night has given the ANC Treasurer General Paul Mashatile an ultimatum to respond to their demands. They want Mashatile to clarify his understanding of last night's court ruling. According to them, the provincial conference that is currently underway in Rustenburg is illegal. The Northwest University political analyst, Professor Duvenhage, whom we'll speak to in just a moment, in fact, is with us now to share his observations. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening, Sabisu. Nice talking to you.
So tell us, what is your interpretation, first, of the court proceedings and the outcome?
Well, to start with, the conference was in a very difficult situation already over the past 3 years. We have seen a number of postponements. Now there was some process trying to get systems to work and to become more functional. And then we had the court case. Now my information is that of the 316 branches, 300 were accredited and the threshold is 282. Now, there's no formal reason why the conference cannot continue. But now we also know that there are a number of disputes, and some of these disputes are now ending up in court. And the result is that this may stop or hold the conference at bay for a moment. And at the moment, they are waiting for the outcome of a court interdict. While waiting, they are continuing with the process. Now, we can argue about who is behind this process. My take on it is that it is most likely that it will be groupings related to the RET forces that may be behind this. My take on the conference is that the two strongest candidates are either Mr. Nonu Molloy or Mr. Bushi Mape.
Okay, let me just stop you there, Prof. Before we get too deep, I still want to unpack this issue of whether or not the conference should go ahead. The ANC's national spokesperson, Pule Mabe, was saying that the conference is really dependent on members or branches in good standing. You've just given us a breakdown of those that are eligible and have been credited. The understanding of the parties that took the matter to court is that they were seeking to interdict the conference. The court handed down a judgment that seemed to satisfy what their demands were, and according to their understanding, the interim structures that are in place, their time has run out, are therefore illegal and have no role to play in the conference. And by the admission of the ANC spokesperson, he said they've taken note of what the court was saying, that they should have extended the mandate that was for 9 months of these structures. So, not being a legal person myself, and with all that you've outlined, for those of us who are bystanders, should the conference go ahead? Is it breaking the law?
My take on it is, and we need to wait for all the arguments because it's now before judges and they need to assess the process, but I cannot see any reason why the conference cannot continue. My own take on the situation is that the interim structures on both the provincial and the regional level are not elected structures but appointed structures. Therefore, I can clearly understand that they shouldn't be part of the formal process. But taking them out of the process, I think there's no formal obstacle that should avoid the conference to continue.
Okay, Prof, I want you to hold the thought. I want you to hold the thought, and please do stay with us, because I do have my colleague who is in Mahikeng who's going to talk to us. I see he's at the conference venue and I want him to give us the very latest. We understand that those who went to court to interdict the process are demanding that Treasurer General address them and for him to give his interpretation of the court proceedings on whether or not the conference should go ahead. What is the latest that you've learned from the ANC and whether or not this is indeed the case that the conference will go ahead?
Well, thank you so much, Sepi. So, an interesting view there. With me here, I'm with the spokesperson of the African National Congress. You know that yesterday there was also another interdict. This morning we heard that they were going to file another interdict to try and stop, this conference from going. But I'm just going to bring the spokesperson, Mr. Mabi, just to talk to us with regards to that. Thank you so much, Mr. Mabi, for your time. Have you guys received any papers?
Well, Ntandla, I can confirm and place it on record, having spoken to our legal counsel, that we have not received any papers. We have not been served with any papers. But even with that, we stand ready, so that panic is not planted out there of papers that the ANC has not even received. We don't even know what nature of a case is being brought before the court to try and interdict this peaceful conference. Where we are, we're waiting for conference to proceed. You can see delegates are beginning to gather outside the hall, disciplined as they are. They've been told that at 9:15 they need to go inside, back to plenary. So you can see they're already beginning to gather outside the conference venue.
But somewhat it must be worrying that, what you spoke about earlier, we spoke about this interdict looming. It must be worrying that you guys are saying that you are continuing, but you are also receiving resistance outside.
No, but we have not received papers, unless we are receiving resistance from you. We have not received papers. We are being told by yourselves. The only people who have told us about this court case is you, the media. We have not received papers.
Are you worried?
Why should we worry about Sabatwa? We have not received papers from where we're sitting. We have not received papers. I've spoken to the legal counsel of the African National Congress. They have confirmed, placed it on record, that we have not received papers. What else must I worry about? We have not received papers. If there's a story being planted out there in the media, and it managed to catch fire much faster, and you went and believed it because you believe many other things that you hear, even without verifying at times, we can't believe something like that.
But we are here to verify that.
But we have not received papers. How can I verify to you something I have not received? Here I am saying it to you on record that we have not received papers. If you have seen those papers, please share them with us. I would love to see that. If we share.
Where to from here now?
Back to plenary.
Just take us to the program. What's going to be happening going forward?
Okay, from here, delegates had gone for dinner. The credentials team is finalizing with the cleaning up of those credentials. Afterwards, we'll be moving back to plenary. At plenary, we will put forward credentials. If the credentials committee is ready, those would then be adopted. If there are issues that branches want to ventilate on as it relates to credentials, they will be given that opportunity. As soon as they are done with the adoption of credentials, because the rules of conference have already been read, so it's a question of just adopting them. Because you need a duly correcting meeting to be able to adopt the rules and the program. Because there's been a number of alterations to the program which we're speaking about. And this is necessitated by the decision we took on the authority of the IPC as it relates to the work that they're expected to do going forward. Then afterwards, we'll invite the Electoral Commission. They will open up and then brief conference on who is qualified and all of that. And then if there are nominations coming from the floor, they will invite those. Take nominations from the floor. If the steering committee makes a determination that, well, still tonight, depending on when the AISA is expected to finish, or otherwise we can tell delegates that from this time, having worked out the schedule with AISA, they can start coming through regions to come and cast their vote.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was Pule Mabe, the national spokesperson of the ANC there, still standing by what he said earlier, saying that they remain unshaken, saying that they haven't received any court papers to indicate that this conference will be interdicted, etc. So with that being said, it's back to you in studio.
All right, Nhlanhla, just before I let you go, a clearly agitated Pule Mabe, and I don't think it's a stretch for me to say the tension that is being spoken about at the conference seems to be indicative of, his heightened mood. There have been reports suggesting allegations of poisoning, food poisoning at the conference. Have you come across some of these reports, and what is the ANC saying? Are they playing it down, this incident? We understand that one of the delegates fell ill, and there was a fear of poisoning of food at the conference.
Well, with regards to that episode, we haven't had anything. But like you just said, tension rising, that this conference has not been going smoothly as, a lot would have anticipated. Like we spoke about yesterday, that before it even took place, there were a lot of postponements. It was delayed. The Deputy President opening the proceedings today started after 4 o'clock when he was supposed to have started at 9 o'clock. But with regards to what you just mentioned, there's no news. What you just mentioned, there's no news that are coming out with regards to any poisoning that has happened here.
All right, Nhlanhla, let's leave you to it. We will hopefully come back to you as and when developments continue. Nhlanhla Kgatlane, my colleague who is there at the North West province, where the ANC Provincial Conference is taking place, and we're back again now with Professor Duvenhage. You've been listening in, Prof. I'd like to perhaps just get your impression of the reaction of the national spokesperson, but not just his reaction, the content thereof. He is saying the legal department says no papers have been served on the ANC, and I am extrapolating that therefore that means conference can go ahead. Were you hearing the same thing? Did you observe the same thing as I did?
Tsepisho, unfortunately, I couldn't hear a word from the conversation, so I need to rely on your reconstruction. The only small part I did hear was about the food poisoning. But in terms of the argument you put forward, if there is no legal papers interdict against the ANC, there's no reason why the conference cannot continue. That will be my political assessment. But now we have two conflicting messages coming from the conference, and we aren't sure, is there a court case going on, or is the court case settled or stopped, or whatever the case may be. So depending on where the truth is lying will depend on if the conference is going to continue or not.
What would be the value of another court action if the court ruled in favor of the parties yesterday, but the interpretation or the understanding is that the conference can go ahead?
Well, I think this is using legal processes to undermine the functioning of the conference, to stop the conference, to come to the point of election, because there are interests at stake in this process, and I think some of the groupings are afraid that they are not going to make it, and they follow all legal processes to stop this. This is the other side of the coin of what we refer to as the Stalingrad strategy. In a way, it is the Stalingrad in reverse.
So there was another aspect to the court ruling, and that was barring certain members. I think it's a total number of 20 of IPC members from voting. What would be the impact of this, particularly given the allegations by the disgruntled members of the role of the IPC and the regional executive committees, and the accusations against them of either attempting to or manipulating certain processes?
Well, we must from the start say that the ANC is in trouble. That is why they ended up, couldn't elect the leadership through proper processes, and they are ending up in interim structures. So in that sense, who should have taken the decisions in this regard? Someone must take them, and that was the Interim Provincial Committee or the Interim Regional Committees. I can understand that they can be withheld to take part in the electoral process, but they cannot put the other institution in place to take the process forward and to hold an elective conference. So I cannot see the legal merits of that argument, and I'm still with my original view that there is not serious things that can uphold the conference. I can see no clear reason at this point why the conference cannot continue, and if the conference is stopped, it must be done through a legal process, which is a legitimate process with legitimate reasons. At the moment, it seems to me as if there's a lot of petty politics going on, trying to derail political processes and the outcome of the provincial elections.
So the court challenge and the finding by the judge, as we mentioned, that 20 IPC members are now prevented from voting. This includes 7 delegates or candidates who are vying for the powerful position of chairperson, 2 of whom you said you see as a front runners, and that is the Human Settlements MEC Nono Maloyi, as well as Premier Bushi Maipe. The question is, how much is this going to impact these factions, the factionalism, and in essence the unity of the conference, be able to go ahead with the business of the day?
I think the numbers of the people connected to the interim structures is relatively small in terms of the total of delegates. I think the total of delegates were mentioned, and it's not clear-cut, but we are talking of a figure around 700, it may be more than 700 people. Now, if you take away the IPC members and the regional members, then we are talking about a limited number. So I cannot see that having a huge impact on the conference as such. But when it comes to factionalism, there, in that sense, we aren't 100% clear. Initial indications are that Mr. Bushi Maipe has the support of, say, the Youth League, the Women's League, and the veterans, and we know that Mr. Nono Maloyi had a very strong campaign running. But we aren't clear about the position of Mr. Supramoamopelu. He is also a dark horse. And then the 2 women candidates, what are their support, and aren't they going to give their support to the one or the other contender? That is currently uncertain. But the role and the impact of the interim committee, I believe, is limited in nature.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us, Professor Duvenhage, at the North West University University. And we will bring you the latest from my colleague Nhlanhla Kgatlana, who is there at the conference, as you saw him speak to the ANC's national spokesperson, Pule Maipe, saying that up to now, the ANC's legal department has not received any papers indicating the intention to indict the ANC's North West Conference from going ahead, as according to reports were saying. All of this is really in the face of media reports. There's nothing official that they've heard of or from, and therefore they will go ahead with this conference. Of course, this is on the back of another group that took the matter to court, trying to interdict this conference, but what they were able to come away with was preventing certain members of the IPC from voting.